Hey, I'm Nick Thomas with InfoSecSync.
And I'm Kevin Cedeno with ISACA Huntsville.
And we're sitting here with Mr. Scott Edwards. He is the president and managing partner of Summit 7 Systems. Welcome, Scott.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Scott, I was walking around over here in the booths, and I noticed a lot of commotion from the Summit 7 booth about, I'm hearing cloud, Gov Cloud. What's going on over there at the Summit 7 booth?
Well, yeah, so we're talking a lot about how to help contractors, especially smaller organizations, say you're 25 to 500 or 1,000 employee companies, how to help them move in a compliant manner from on-premise systems, from other cloud systems into the Microsoft cloud. That's where we specialize, is helping companies move into Office 365, Azure, Azure Government, and Office 365 Government Community Cloud High. So moving into those platforms from wherever they are today.
So you have a little bit of an expertise there, because everyone doesn't know how to go about contacting Microsoft to get through the hurdles of getting accreditation for 800-171 and all the NIST policies there. So that's great that you guys bring that expertise to the community there.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, there are a lot of hurdles to cross when you're trying to get into these environments. Microsoft actually requires you to go through a validation process before you're even allowed to get into the environment. Okay. So you have to prove that you have a government contractual need to handle ITAR or CUI data before they'll even allow you to buy access into the environment. So yeah, there are a lot of hurdles. We have helped a lot of companies through those hurdles, and so by working with a partner like us, you can shortcut that process in a lot of ways.
Okay.
And my understanding is that you're only 1 out of 5 companies that are currently doing that.
That's right. There's only 5 companies that Microsoft has identified and allows to sell Government Community Cloud High licensing for companies under 500 users. So up until about 3 months ago, Microsoft required a minimum of 500 users to be able to buy access into Government Community Cloud High for Office 365. But there's an outcry among the defense industrial base that, hey, 75% of our companies in the defense industrial base are under 500 employees, right? And so we need access to this because we've got to secure CUI and ITAR data.
Yeah.
But Microsoft isn't allowing us in, right? And so Microsoft finally made that happen. But the constraint that they put on it was that you've got to go through one of these companies who really understands about how to move you into this environment in a secure and compliant manner. They know the quirks, they know the challenges of moving into GCC High, and they've kind of knighted us, if you will, because we've got the battle scars, if you will, of working in the environment, and we can help companies through it.
So what are some of the benefits of moving into a secure cloud platform like GCC?
Yeah, so some of the benefits really are about consolidation. A consolidation of your environment, leveraging a single environment to meet a lot of the controls. When you start talking about trying to meet NIST 800-171, there's 110 controls there, right? There's a lot there to do. And when you're trying to do that in an on-premise situation, or you're trying to piece together a bunch of different cloud services and trying to determine, are all these cloud services FedRAMP compliant? Are they not FedRAMP compliant? Where is this software developed? How do we integrate all these pieces together? It gets very expensive, both from a software standpoint, because you have to buy all these different pieces of software, but then the integration costs on top of it. The real benefit of moving into something like Office 365 GCC High is that software has already been integrated for you, right? You really just have to, since it's software as a service, you have to essentially be responsible for your data and making sure that your data is properly marked, that your data is properly secured from a permission standpoint, and that you configure all the remaining controls for NIST 800-171 within the platform. So yeah, there's still a lot of work to do, but it's a lot less work than trying to build and integrate these systems all on-prem or piecing together a bunch of various cloud services to do it.
Yeah.
And that speaks to the relationship, right? It's almost a complementary relationship between 171, which is on-prem, and something like FedRAMP.
Right. So FedRAMP is a designation that the government came out with to go out and identify cloud solution providers that had met a minimum standard for security for their data centers, right? And so they have FedRAMP Moderate and they have FedRAMP High. And there's about 75 or so data centers or services out there that are FedRAMP Moderate compliant in the country. And then you only have 3 right now that are FedRAMP High compliant. You have Microsoft Azure Government, you have AWS government, and then you have CSRA's environment. Okay, and CSRA was just bought out by, I believe, Northrop Grumman, I believe is who just bought out CSRA. So those are only 3 FedRAMP high environments out there. And so what Microsoft has done is with GCC High, FedRAMP is all about the data center and the infrastructure, whereas Office 365 GCC High is a SaaS solution that is built on top of that FedRAMP compliance cover. Okay, so they've built this platform, this SaaS platform on top of FedRAMP, and now once you get access to that, you have the ability to then configure that environment to NIST 800-171. All of the controls are there, the capabilities are there. It's all up to you. You then just have to configure the software to meet your controls and your policies that you set. 60% or so of the controls for NIST 800-171 are policy in nature. And so you set your policies, and then those remaining controls are all technical in nature, and you need to set those technical controls to reflect what you said you were going to do on your policy controls. And that's what 800-171 sitting on top of FedRAMP is all about.
So it is important, would you say that it is important for someone who's looking at the possibility of moving to cloud to understand that, most of the controls will be taken care of, by the platform, but there's still work to do.
Yeah, there is still work to do. And in some cases, depending on how your policies are set up, it can be a significant amount of work. 800-171 is a significant amount of work. It doesn't matter where you do it. There is a lot of work to do there because those controls, while some of them you can do really quickly, some of them are simple policies you can put in place as long as you're following that policy. There are other pieces that can get very complex depending on how complex your environment is. Let's take a simple one like multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is something that everybody knows about now. Everybody knows we have to do it. And there are some very simple solutions out there to get MFA in place, but depending on the number of systems you have, how those systems are integrated together, multi-factor authentication can get really complex very fast depending on your system. So, what Microsoft has done with Office 365 GCC High is they built in multi-factor authentication into the platform. And so if you're not using anything else except for Office 365, MFA is just built in there. It's part of the suite.
That's great.
And you can leverage it right out of the bat. There's nothing you have to do. You just turn it on. But once you start integrating external systems into it, that's when you have to start looking at how do we integrate potentially third-party MFA solutions in there, a Duo, or if you wanted to go all the way up to and replacing your identity provider to something like an Okta or something like that, then you have more integration and configuration to do.
Okay. What other families from, for example, 800-171, will say that your customers take advantage because it is on the cloud?
Another big one is the auditing. And auditing is a big piece of it. And the great thing that Microsoft has just released, they've only released this in the commercial side so far, but it's coming on the GCC High side. The way it works is when Microsoft releases a feature, they release it in commercial first. And then that feature is 6 to 9 months later, usually it gets released into GCC High because they have to go through all the compliance checks. They have to make sure that they're maintaining the FedRAMP compliance and all of that, so it takes time for it to be released into the Gov Cloud. But auditing is one that has been released into commercial. It's across the board already, but what I'm talking about, the feature that I'm talking about, allows you to integrate it into an external SIM. Okay, so if you wanted to connect an external SIM into Office 365, you can have that external SIM essentially pull all the auditing capability, all the audit logs that Office 365 has directly into that SIM and do your automated reporting and everything directly out of your SIM solution. If you want to use Office 365 as a SIM solution, you have the ability to tie other log providers into Office 365 MCAS, which is Microsoft's Cloud Access Security or Cloud App Security solution. You can pull other logs in there. Say, for example, if you had firewall logs and you wanted to pull your firewall logs into MCAS, you could do that and you can actually see, okay, I've got users that are sending, just sent 6 gigabytes of data to Dropbox, and this user sent, 8 gigabytes of data to Box or whatever. And so it helps you identify these other potentially shadow IT or rogue IT solutions that are being leveraged in your environment. You can identify those and then go re-educate your team on, hey, we have a solution for that we're doing, that's corporately managed. Let's use those solutions. Let's not send our CUI and potentially ITAR data out to these unmanaged solutions that we don't have anything to do with.
Okay. So if you're trying to, for example, have a lab, right, and you're would you say that you can leverage cloud as a means of segmenting that environment?
Yeah, I mean, labs and dev environments, that's really where a lot of people really step their toe in, right? Going into something like an Azure Gov, setting up a lab, you can very easily build those things out, spin them up as you need them, shut them down when you don't need them anymore, replicate them to a production environment. You can migrate content from one to the other.
And this is very simple, right? It's just clicks.
It is just clicks. I mean, there is complexity in it depending on how complex the infrastructure is you're building. But if you're just talking about simple VMs, then yeah, it's super simple. But Microsoft has the ability now to do things like ExpressRoute, where you can essentially set up dedicated networks that go from your facility directly into Microsoft's environment, Microsoft's data center. So you have dedicated fiber bandwidth, going through an AT&T or a CenturyLink or whoever, so that you have all the bandwidth that you need. So it's just like it's on your, it's part of your network, right? So you have that capability if you need it.
Okay. So Scott, how can the people listening and watching get in touch with you to get some of your expertise?
Well, sure. So, our website is www.summit7systems, SUMMIT, the number 7systems.com. You can also send email to info@summit7systems.com, and we'll certainly be happy to get back to you. But if you have a need to move into Office 365 GCC High to help you manage your CUI data, your ITAR data, we can certainly help you through that process, migrating from an on-premise solution, migrating from other various cloud solutions into Office 365 GCC High. We can help you through that process.
All right, great stuff from Scott Edwards with Summit 7. Scott, hey, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks for staying in sync
With InfoSecSync.